Life, wisdom, PsycheTruth, massage.
This is Athena Jezik. Today we're going to do some interesting work on and demonstrations on the neck. We'll start with the neck. And so I'll explain as much as I can while I'm doing this. I'm going to start out by just rotating the neck from side to side. Doing it easy. The person that's being worked on needs to let go of the neck muscles because sometimes they either try to help or try to hold it and kind of fight against it. So work this gently until you feel a lot of fluidity in the movement, just back and forth. And then you can begin to feel a little different range of motion by moving the head in a little bit different directions, but keep it gentle. And from side to side. Okay. Now here I'm just making little circular motions back at the neck muscles from the skull down the neck to where the shoulders muscles kind of begin, where the trapezius comes across there. Little circular motions up through that muscle. I'll show you the head turn. It's just little circular motions around like that. Just gently softening the muscle. Necks become pretty stiff. We hold them pretty steady when we're doing computer work or driving, and a lot of people do have a lot of stiffness in their neck. So we're just going to work it out a little bit and unwind it today. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on my fingers. Just a very, very small amount to give just enough slip. I always think it's better to use just enough oil to get a good viscosity so that you're moving well on the skin and not over oil. Sometimes with over oiling it gets too slippery. And then you somewhat lose the sense of what you're doing. Let's scoot in a little closer. Okay, now I'm going to lift up her neck and I'm going to be rotating it and pulling my fingers along up, first closest to the spine, and you can kind of pull the head forward a little bit to get a nice stretch, bringing it up and doing it a little bit farther from the spine, and you can see how the head is dropping downward as I'm stretching the neck up, and then on the edge of the muscle back there, a little edge there, and have it stretch, going up, and the same thing on the other side. Close in, a little farther away. What you want to feel with this is you want to feel a very smooth muscle, something that's very pliable, and something that's not giving you resistance. Okay, now you can take the movement in the other direction where you're going to roll the head to the side and then start up at the base of the skull and pull it downward, following into the trapezius muscle. And this is going to take just a little bit more oil onto the shoulder. I know in massage school we're trained to not break touch with the body. I used to follow that rule, but I find that it's pleasant to stay connected, but there's times when you can come off the body, and in some of my other training, it gives the body a little chance just to rest. When you take your hand off, if you have to apply oil, but that's not a real big issue to be worried about. Now here, when I'm coming down in the neck, we want to be careful through here without a lot of pressure, but I'm coming right to the clavicle, and I'm taking my thumb up along the clavicle, which is the bone right here, and letting the attachments have a little bit of work done on them as I take my thumb along that bone. But I'm a little bit behind the bone. I'm not really on top of it. I'm a little bit behind it where there's a little more muscle. You don't want to really work on top of a bone, but I'm on the edge of the bone. You can maybe see it. And then we're going to get into this sternocleidomastoid muscle. Now here I'm going to take this down very solid and slow and without a lot of pressure. Comes in and attaches into there, and then you can pull it aside. Okay, beside the sternocleidomastoid. You're getting into some of the other neck muscles that are deeper. And a little bit of work across that way. Now this is very gentle. Some people do have an issue around their neck, so you might want to ask whoever you were working on if they do have a problem with their neck. I have had people that have been very guarded of their neck, even to a point of not wanting to even be touched, not even able to have a turtleneck on their neck. Something happened to them where there was a choking incident. But with time, all of that can be remedied. And I'm doing the same thing on this side. Brush it down the clavicle a little bit more. And then across it very gently. Okay. Now with the head being straight up, I'm going to get into more of the front part of the neck, and I'm going to add a little more oil. Maybe just a little bit more. She seems to be soaking up the oil. Sometimes the oil doesn't stay on the skin quite as slippery when the skin is dry. Okay, now we can run across these clavicles here. And this is the upper part of the clavicle. And here we're going to be getting right underneath the clavicle. Just rubbing back and forth. There's parts here around the shoulder. I'm just working around the neck area now to the more upper muscles, because they're indirectly involved with neck movement and head rotation. And here I'm just coming up the neck again. When you're doing this and you come along really close from both sides, you don't want to be on the vertebrae, but you're on either side of the vertebrae. You can tell a lot what's going on when you feel like something maybe sticking to the side a little bit. That might be a little bit of a subluxation. Sometimes it's just a muscle that's a little bit knotted because it's in a funny position. So you want to go slower through those areas when you find them. Just press in without any forceful pressure and let the tissues soften and open up a little more. and keep the pressure on it that's very light, and the muscle will respond. If you get too heavy with it, then it's going to give you a resistance back, and then it's not going to be as effective. You'll take the muscle into more of a muscle failure response, and it'll let go, but it's just because it doesn't have the proper chemicals to trigger the response. So it's best to stay lighter and work with the body. And then we can go, here's the sternocleidomastoid, right here. And you have to be very, very, very mindful when you're working this, but here I'm going to pull it out a little bit and do some rotations just so I can get behind it. And bringing that down. And just check it and see how it feels. And once you get behind it a little bit, you can pick it up again and run your hand down, kind of hold it up with one side and take the thumb back underneath it. So I'm right underneath the muscle there. And same on this side, find the sternocleidomastoid and just run your finger under behind it here. And again, be very gentle. There's a lot of structures in the neck. You don't want to cause any damage or any discomfort for anybody. And then always, it's nice to spread out. You don't have to do it, but it's nice to kind of do a spreading technique. And then if you're going to get in up near the esophagus and the voice box, the trachea, all of that in here, you can just very gently rotate around this area. This is covering here. You're going to have the thyroid gland is in this area. It's behind here. There's a hyoid bone right here, which is a U-shaped bone that has no attachment to the skeleton. It's all held on with muscle. It's kind of like a floating bone out there. And so I've got my fingers now on that hyoid area. And it's unwinding. And then we're going to take it down behind here, very, very gently, little light circular motion around the structure of the throat. And then if you feel very lightly across the top here, with men you might run into an Adam's apple, but you can feel it feels like a little washboard. There's little areas in between that you can kind of massage in between and work it that way. And then for the major neck unwinding, I'm going to have to leverage myself a little different here, since we are working on the floor. So here you can twist the head. Now, when this is done, if you can, keep a traction on it, a pulling, but it's not a traction where you're pulling the bone so much as it is that you're pulling the fascia. So there's a long kind of a stretching feeling like you're pulling up a stocking. And you can take it this direction, up, down, and then set the head back down. One of the things that you want to watch for too when you're doing this is you can tell a lot about the alignment when you place the head. One is if the chin is relatively straight on there when you're laying, you have a good stretch back here. Sometimes when you lay people down, their chins will go way back. The neck needs to be more lengthened. Sometimes you can even put a little something under there to keep that chin straighter. But in time, that will stretch out, and it does make some differences in some of those widow's humps. Some of that kind of stuff can be corrected out to a degree. And then you also look if the head, sometimes this stays pretty well, this is pretty centered, but sometimes when you let people's head go, it might roll to the side. And if that's the case, then it just means that there's something out of alignment, a little bit of misalignment and a little bit of tension pulling in a direction, and you just work on correcting that with the body. Oftentimes that'll be found in another area, maybe down in the sacrum. And oftentimes that takes a cranial technique rather than massage technique. To be able to correct that, sometimes you might need to go to chiropractic work or one of the people that adjusts atlases, something like that. Okay, there we have a little bit on the neck.